Good morning. My name is Burke Bennett, and I'm the commander of the Hampton's American Legion Post 35. And on behalf of Post 35, I'd like to thank each of you for joining us this morning to honor our nation's fallen heroes. At this time, I'd like to ask Reverend Mike Gelsomini of the United Christ Church, Northampton, to lead us in an invocation. Please bow your heads.
Let us be together in the spirit of prayer. Holy One, we gather this morning to remember those who are resting in your peace, those who have made the ultimate sacrifice, so that we can enjoy the freedoms we have today. This is a sacred time, a time filled with honor, respect, and reverence. It is a time not only to remember those men and women who have died, but to remember the family members that they have left behind, the fathers, mothers, sisters, brothers, friends, and loved ones. They are all part of that sacrifice. Comfort them, O God, wipe away their tears, and grant them peace. Holy One, bless our time together this morning, and make it holy. Amen.
Thank you, Reverend Mike. At this time, I'd like to ask our civilian guests to please remove your hats and place your right hand over your heart as we pay our respects to the flag of our great nation. At this time, the national anthem will be played by the Winnicott High School Band under the direction of Kenneth Martin. Detail, attend, hut, present, arms. Order! Arms! At this time, I'd like to acknowledge our veterans. Will all of our Army veterans please raise your hand and be acknowledged? Navy veterans. United States Marine Corps. Air Force, Coast Guard, Space Force, our wartime merchant mariners, and our first responders, our police and firefighters. Will our Korean War veterans please raise your hand? The Korean War. Vietnam. Conflicts from 1975 to 1991. Operations Iraqi Freedom, Enduring Freedom, and Freedom Sentinel. And last but not least, the members of our greatest generation, our World War II vets. This year marks 50 years since U.S. combat troops pulled out of South Vietnam in 1973, ending America's direct military involvement in the war. The Vietnam War was the most controversial, and until the war in Afghanistan, the longest war in our nation's history. But today I'm not here to discuss the war itself. Many books have been written about the war and how it was conducted, and scholars will be debating it for generations. I want to touch on our veterans who fought the war, and I want to remember those who didn't come home. Specifically, I want to talk about the Vietnam vets who were members of American Legion Post 35, your friends, neighbors, and relatives. Almost half our members are Vietnam-era vets, and many served in Vietnam doing many different jobs. Some members were supply specialists, making sure that our soldiers had the food and equipment they needed to fight the war. Some were in the Air Force, loading the bombs onto the B-52s, or were aircraft mechanics, and some were pilots flying the tankers that refueled our fighters, or flying unarmed cargo planes into remote outposts, sometimes under enemy fire. Some were helicopter pilots, ferrying soldiers into battle and evacuating the wounded. Some of our women members were nurses during the war, providing life-saving medical care to our wounded. Other members were in the Navy, serving aboard landing ships, bringing supplies and vehicles to the Army and Marines along the coast, or they were aboard large amphibious assault ships, which supported the Marines offshore. Some were Marine Corps engineers, operating the heavy equipment to help build the McNamara Line south of the DMZ. And a handful of our members were Army and Marine infantry, known as grunts. They were the ones who did the majority of the fighting, and many experienced fierce combat. To these soldiers on the ground in Vietnam, they didn't care about the grand strategy of the generals or the politicians. What mattered most out in the boonies was keeping yourself and your buddies in one piece. It was the grunts who jumped out of the helicopters into a hot LZ under enemy fire. It was the grunts slogging through the rice paddies with mud so thick it sucked the boots right off their feet. It was the grunts who moved through sharp elephant grass taller than a man, or marched up and down mountains in a helmet and a flak vest, all while carrying up to 80 pounds of gear. It was the grunts who were the forward observers at the front lines, calling for artillery support to stop an enemy attack, and it was the artillery battalions at the fire support bases who answered their prayers. Being a grunt meant dealing with the heat, humidity, the torrential rain, insects, and snakes, all while being on the lookout for ambushes and booby traps. It meant searching for an enemy that was hard to find and harder to fight. It meant fighting in a war where we controlled the villages by day, but at night they belonged to the Viet Cong. It meant measuring success on the battlefield by body counts rather than by taking and holding territory on the ground. More than 50 years later, the war still affects our Vietnam veterans. Many suffer from PTSD, and some shout out in their sleep, still fighting a battle that began long ago, but for them, never seems to end. Some suffer from the effects of Agent Orange and are now suffering from cancer, heart disease, and other health problems. Some still have bullet fragments or shrapnel in their body from a firefight or mortar attack over 50 years ago. They all paid a price for serving in Vietnam, and some would say they left a big portion of their life over there. One of our members, looking for closure, went back to Vietnam to help look for the remains of a fellow soldier from his unit who was killed and never recovered. Another served in a unit where a young Marine was awarded the Medal of Honor after he was killed throwing his body on a grenade, saving the lives of his fellow Marines. I can tell you that this veteran thinks about that young Marine every day of his life. A lot of our veterans suffer from survivor's guilt, wondering why they made it and others didn't. Many still think about their experiences in Vietnam daily. And we need to remember our Vietnam vets as a nation and as a community and thank them for their service and their sacrifice. I want to take a moment to remember the soldiers and Marines from our local area who were killed in Vietnam. You see their names on various street signs and parks in Hampton in honoring their memory. First Lieutenant Bruce Brown, United States Army. Specialist 4th Class Mark Brown, United States Army. Captain John Falcone, United States Army. Private Stephen Philbrick, United States Marine Corps. Major Murray Smith, United States Air Force, all from Hampton. And Private First Class Robert Shaw, United States Marine Corps, from Northampton. Their names are among the 58,276 American servicemen and women killed in the Vietnam War, whose names are forever etched in the polished black granite panels of the Vietnam Veterans Memorial in Washington. Please take a moment this weekend to think of all those that gave their lives in all wars for our country. They died so we can enjoy the peace and freedom this nation holds so dear. Our guest speaker this morning is Chief Master Sergeant Alexander J. Reno, United States Air Force Reserve, retired, who served as a group senior enlisted leader for the 439th Maintenance Group at Westover Air Reserve Base in Massachusetts. As the group's senior enlisted leader, he served as the key enlisted advisor to the 439th's commander on operational effectiveness and all matters related to the organization, training, and equipment of enlisted airmen. Chief Reno entered the Air Force in October of 2002 and graduated from the Aerospace Ground Equipment Technician course at Sheppard Air Force Base, Texas in May of 2003. His assignments included Aerospace Ground Equipment Maintenance Supervisor, 439th Maintenance Squadron at Westover, as well as Inspection Supervisor, LOD at Air Base, Qatar. Prior to his final assignment, he served as a first sergeant for multiple squadrons within the 439th Airlift Wing. And during his tenure, he has been activated twice, deployed once in support of Operation Enduring Freedom, Iraqi Freedom, and Operation Noble Eagle. Chief Master Sergeant Reno, who retired from the Air Force Reserve in November of 2022, was promoted to Chief of Police in Hampton in December of the same year. His awards and decorations include the Meritorious Service Medal, Air Force Commendation Medal, Air Force Achievement Medal, Air Force Outstanding Unit Award with 2 oak leaf clusters, Air Reserve Forces Meritorious Service Medal with silver oak leaf cluster, National Defense Service Medal, Global War on Terrorism Expeditionary Medal, Global War on Terrorism Service Medal, Air Force Expeditionary Service Ribbon with gold border, among others. Chief Master Sergeant Reno resides in Northampton with his wife Kimberly and their 2 children. Ladies and gentlemen, it is my honor to introduce to you Chief Master Sergeant Alex Reno, United States Air Force Reserve, retired.
It was April, and the temperatures were well above 100 degrees and exponentially hotter on the airfield on a base in Southwest Asia. An alert came out that there was an inbound aircraft that was carrying the remains of American military members coming from various parts of the area of responsibility destined to go home to their families. This solemn movement of the transfer cases was part of a larger process by which the aircraft would later make a stop in Germany before finally arriving at Dover Air Force Base in Delaware, where the fallen service member would eventually be reunited with their family. This type of event was unfortunately not an uncommon one during that deployment. Grabbing the newest airman that had arrived to our deployed unit, we made our way to the airfield where a C-17 sat apart from the rest of the aircraft. The ramp was normally a constant sound of loud aircraft engines, equipment, and the accompanying sound of bombers and jets taking off. The sound of freedom, we usually remarked, confident and cocky in our delivery. As we approached the aircraft, the aft ramp was lowered, exposing the first glimpse of its precious and profound cargo. In that moment, all of that engine noise seemed to dull into no more than a soft, muffled hum in the background. As loud as the ambient air truly was, as we stood there, it was inexplicably silent. We entered the cargo area of the aircraft to behold the sight of a number of rectangle-shaped transfer cases tightly adorned in old glory. The chaplain spoke. The commander spoke. They honored the men and the women who once laid under the evening stars back home, but now find rest under the stars and stripes that draped their transport vessel. To be honest, the words that were spoken left little impression on us in that occasion, as the caskets in front of us told all the story that we needed to hear that day. This loss, this sacrifice, this silence, this was the true sound of freedom, I reflected, confident and humbled in my thoughts. We did not know these men and women in life, but we full well understood the immeasurable sacrifice that their deaths represented. They had plans, dreams, families, friends, just like all of us. Their families may not have yet even known that this fate had befallen their loved one. We prayed or reflected individually, saluted slowly as the caskets were transferred from the aircraft, and then departed in silence. This almost daily reminder was a sobering view of the cost of freedom and the perils of battle. With all the other distractions that come along with getting the aircraft in the air, these dignified transfers kept us focused on our own mission and reminded us that we had a job to do. At the end of May, I returned home just before Memorial Day. It was an unusually hot Memorial Day that year. As I listened to the people around the area, there were complaints of the heat, traffic at the beach, people upset about being late to their cookout, and complaints about having to work on a long weekend when they wanted to go away for vacation. This is all difficult to listen to. I couldn't understand why people did not recognize what this day was supposed to be about. Having just returned from an almost daily reminder of what this day was supposed to mean, it was frustrating. I came to realize that in our day-to-day lives, it's easy to get distracted and lose sight of how fortunate we are to have the freedoms that we do. Just as service members needed a reminder of why the success of their mission was so important, I realized that the folks back home needed to be reminded of what their mission on this day was. Your mission today is to remember the fallen. This day isn't about cookouts and vacations, nor is it for thanking living veterans for their service. It's to remember the fallen. I'm thankful that you're all here doing your part to fulfill this incredibly important duty. For as Abraham Lincoln remarked, a nation that does not honor its heroes will not long endure. Our flag rests at half-staff right now to remind us all of the solemn observances of today. At noon, the flag will once again be raised to full staff. This is a great reminder that while we celebrate the fallen, their sacrifice has lifted up our nation, its people, and our freedoms. Our flag flies because they were willing to raise it up with their lives. We do not know all of their names. We don't know everything that they did, but we live in the sunshine and security of their service. They fought and died for what they believed in. As General George Patton said, "It's better to fight for something in life than to die for nothing." We will not forget what they have done and will continue to pay them honor and celebrate the freedoms that came at their expense, lest their deaths be in vain. May their memory inspire us to be better, to stand up for what is right, and to cherish the freedoms that we hold so dear. And may we always remember that freedom is not free, but it is a precious gift handed down to us, each generation, by the brave souls who rest in eternal peace. And please do not forget about the insurmountable void left by the loss of our brothers and sisters who have died at home under the crushing pressure of veteran suicide. If you are one such service member who is suffering, please know that you are not alone. There are people who care about you. There is help available, and you have a purpose. I'd like to thank American Legion Post 35 and Commander Burke Bennett for allowing me to speak today, as well as for the continued service that they provide to veterans, the fallen, and their families. I would especially like to thank the Gold Star families in attendance today. No words can describe the depth of gratitude that we have for your family and your heroic service member. We know that behind every story of a brave fallen soldier is a grieving family whose path has been forever altered and who must live daily with the loss and heartache. For it is the family that also serves, often struggling in silence, and who bears the largest brunt in a time of loss. We are forever indebted to you and thinking of you today. Today, sadness, loneliness, and loss are for the living. Honor and tribute are for the fallen. I hope you all have a reflective Memorial Day. Thank you, and may God bless the fallen, their families, and the United States of America.
Thank you, Alex. At this time, we'll have a musical selection from the Northampton School Student Choir under the direction of Mary Oliver. Thank you, that was wonderful. This time I'd like to invite Reverend Mike Gelsomini to lead us in a benediction. Please bow your heads.
God, we give you thanks for this time spent apart this morning, this time of remembering and honoring. May it not end here. May we not take our freedoms for granted. Our freedom to worship you in our own ways. Our freedoms to assemble. Our freedoms of speech. As we're sitting at our barbecues, sharing time with families, may we take time to remember all who have made that ultimate sacrifice. And may it not just be today, but every day. When we think of those that we have lost and the sacrifice they made, may it prompt us to work towards ways of peace, toward ways that will bring people and nations together, so that one day we may all live in freedom and peace. Amen.
Thank you, Reverend Mike. At this time, a bell will be tolled by Petty Officer Joe Cutt, United States Navy, Vietnam, as we read the wars and conflicts involving the United States of America. Revolutionary War, Civil War, Spanish-American War, World War I, World War II, Korean War, Vietnam War, America's wars and conflicts from 1975 to 1992, Operation Desert Storm, Operation Iraqi Freedom, Operation Enduring Freedom, Operation Freedom Sentinel. Detail, attend, hut. Present, arms. Firing party, salute the fallen. Order, arms. Ladies and gentlemen, I'd like to thank Reverend Gelsomini, Ken Martin, and the world-famous Winnicott High School Band. I'd like to thank all the units who marched today, the Northampton Youth Association, the Northampton School Band, under the direction of Daniel Singer. I'd like to thank Mary Oliver and the Northampton School Choir. Special thank you to Northampton Channel 22 under the direction of John Savastano, who helped set this all up today. I'd like to thank Don Stebbins and Joe Cutt. Thank you to Post 35 Firing Party and the Color Guard. Thank you to our state reps and state senators, Northampton Selectman and Town Manager Mike Tully, and other dignitaries. Thanks to the Northampton Police Department and Chief LaJoy of the Northampton Fire Department. And a special thank you to all our vets. This concludes our ceremony this morning. There'll be a parade in Hampton at 11:30, followed by our High Street Cemetery ceremony. May God bless and keep our fallen heroes. May God bless and protect the servicemen and women of our armed forces. May God bless the United States of America. Thank you. I want to thank you all for coming out. This is a tremendous turnout for Northampton. We love to see it. You guys deserve a round of applause. And although we had a few kinks in the parade coming from a new origin point to a new destination, I think this worked out fairly well. Does the town of Northampton like having the ceremony here? Yeah. Well, there you have it. All right, we'll keep that in mind for next year. Remember, we have a Veterans Day ceremony here also.